All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Wentao, and I'm very happy to be here today to tell you about an interview study that I and my co-authors, Alex, Nathan, and Michelle worked on to understand how experts personalize privacy and security advice for at-risk users. Oh, I'll click. Okay, there we go. So let me start by giving you some examples of what I mean by at-risk users. Let's say Joe, a journalist, reports on government corruption, and now that government is using expensive spyware to try and track her and her devices. Or, I have this backwards. Okay, here we go. No? Please hold. I'll just use the mouse. Great. Okay. Another example, Sid is being harassed online by an abusive ex-partner. And this is an adversary who has a lot of personal knowledge about her and potentially some access to formerly shared accounts and devices. So these are just a couple examples of at-risk users who face increased chances of being digitally attacked and or suffering disproportionate harms. And we think that it's really important to give at-risk users good privacy and security advice in order for them to have agency and safety. And unsurprisingly, the advice that we give to the average user is often insufficient for at-risk users. So ideally, advice should be tailored to individual situations. The thing is, tailoring advice, figuring out what advice is right for a particular individual is complex, it's risky, it's subjective. Just to give one example, say you find spyware on someone's phone, you may recommend deleting that spyware outright, but this can also have the consequence of raising the risk of physical violence. So there's a lot of great work by experts at organizations like the Clinic to End Tech Abuse and the Committee to Protect Journalists who offer long-term clinics and helplines to provide tailored advice to individual at-risk clients. And we know that a lot of these providers put in a lot of efforts to really get to know the needs of the communities that they serve. But we don't really have a great picture of their actual processes and perspectives on how to actually tailor advice, because a lot of this is not really formally and openly documented. And by filling this gap, we believe that we can inform efforts to study and improve advice for at-risk users. We can identify ways to address the challenges that providers face. And we can also improve self-service advice tools, which automatically deliver tailored advice to individual users. So we conducted an interview study with 3 research questions. First, what kinds of choices do providers make to differentiate advice for different people and why? Second, how can research and technology design better support providers in tailoring advice? And then finally, how should self-service tools account for risk factors when tailoring advice? And for this study, we recruited 18 providers through organizations, through personal networks, and through snowball sampling. And our participants mainly cover 3 areas of expertise. Most of them are well-versed in giving advice to human rights defenders like activists and journalists. Many of them also have some specialty in issues affecting racial minorities, religious minorities, and other kind of identity-based minorities. And then some have expertise in tech abuse as well. And one of the main contributions of our study is to distill some of these findings into a framework that describes how advice providers use different kinds of methods to learn different types of context about their client situations in order to achieve different objectives in tailoring advice. And I'm more than happy to talk about any of this in the poster session, but for now we're just going to zoom in on different strategies that providers employ to kind of try and get reliable information about their clients. Unsurprisingly, one thing that's quite common is that advice providers get a lot of relevant information from their clients by asking directly. And this is easy, but there's some pretty crucial caveats about the reliability of information. As this participant told us, clients may overestimate the kinds of threats that they face, right? Quote, if you don't have a lot of technical knowledge, it's very easy to feel like your abuser is capable of anything and everything. Alternatively, clients also sometimes underestimate threats. Clients sometimes give wildly inaccurate judgments of their own capacity to kind of learn new tools and habits. And so providers told us that they take a lot of this information that clients tell them with a grain of salt. One of the most useful things that providers can do is to really dig in and search for evidence of compromised accounts and devices. At the same time, when there aren't clear conclusions, this can almost kind of like cause more harm. So this participant told us because it's often kind of hard to prove whether there's spyware on a device or not. Quote, I would rather start by ruling out relatively non-technical issues because looking for spyware can really freak out the person that I'm working with. And a lot of participants told us that it's really important to them to look out for the psychological well-being of their clients. And so spending a bunch of time, doing stuff looking for evidence of a compromised account and then kind of coming up inconclusive can really feel like a step backwards. In order to get trustworthy information, participants described sometimes spending a bunch of time observing or researching their clients. So one example, encryption tools are often rather difficult to use. And so this participant told us that they described this process that they go through, where they have clients try out successively easier to use tools to kind of see like where is the right level of technical complexity that this person can handle. Um, so Veracrypt, for instance, if you're a normal person, you're going to stumble trying to use this. But if a client can figure out how to use it, then they say, okay, we can give you anything. And this takes time, which providers often don't have a lot of, but it is really potentially useful. And then finally, as kind of a fallback, participants also told us about essentially making inferential guesses. So this participant said they will look at a client's geographical and cultural background, and based on that, sometimes make some assumptions about the technical competency, about the risks. This may not be accurate, but it's maybe also sometimes good enough, especially if you don't have a lot of time or access to a client. And so one of our main takeaways from some of these findings that I just talked about is that providers constantly grapple with many sources of uncertainty when they're tailoring advice. And we have some recommendations for how researchers and technologists can help. First, providers feel that there needs to be more research on evolving threats and technologies. The paper goes into more detail on this, but basically, the more that providers can kind of recognize prevalent patterns of attacks, the more that they can recognize the symptoms of those attacks when they're actually meeting with clients. There's a need for better diagnostic tools to detect compromised devices and accounts. So even when these tools exist, providers are often a little bit wary about using them because of the likelihood of inconclusive results, which can really distress clients. And then there's also a need for more accessible client-facing tools for tasks like encryption or password management. And this might seem kind of strange as a way of reducing uncertainty, but actually it's a really common thing that providers spend a lot of time trying to assess, like, is the advice that I want to give to this client, is it something that's reasonable to give to them? Is it something that's going to be accessible enough? And so we should come up with better ways of supporting this kind of technical competency evaluation, but even better, we should make tools more usable where we can. All right, so please come to my poster. It's back there. I'm happy to talk more about this framework that we developed for how providers tailor advice. Also happy to talk more about the guidelines that we developed for how to design self-service tools responsibly. And finally, I am recruiting grad students in human-centered security and privacy at the University of Georgia starting fall of 2027. And I would love to chat more if you're interested. And I would also really appreciate it if you would share with your networks. Thanks so much.